The mood around Manchester United is starting to shift, and you can feel it. Today we have got an enormous amount of Manchester United transfer news to get through, and with Champions League qualifications sealed and just 3 games of the season remaining, every single story matters for what happens this summer. We are talking about Carlos Baleba and why Team Talk are reporting an £80 million transfer is expected to be completed, making him the most likely Casemiro replacement. We are talking about Cole Palmer and whether Chelsea's continued collapse is opening the door to the transfer that would be the most exciting single signing of the summer. Let us get into every single story right now. Start with the Baleba news, because this is the most concrete and most specific transfer update to emerge around United's summer plans this week. Team Talk are reporting that Carlos Baleba is expected to complete an £80 million transfer to Manchester United this summer, with the Brighton midfielder identified as the most likely of the Casemiro replacement options to actually complete an Old Trafford switch. The report is specific in its financial framing, describing £80 million as being allocated from £150 million of total midfield budget dedicated to this specific position area, which gives the clearest indication yet of the scale of investment United are prepared to make in transforming the engine room of Carrick's squad. Baleba's journey to this point is a fascinating one. United tried to sign him last summer and failed to agree a deal with Brighton at what was then an asking price that United considered significantly inflated relative to their own valuation. Brighton subsequently received less transfer interest from other clubs than they had anticipated. Baleba himself had a difficult season with limited minutes, and the combination of those factors has brought the price down to a level where United's interest has been reinvigorated, and Brighton's willingness to listen to serious offers has increased considerably. Romano confirmed earlier this month that a verbal agreement between Baleba and Manchester United from 2025 remains valid, and that the player is still very keen on a move to Old Trafford, which means the player side of the equation is already essentially resolved. It is now simply a question of the clubs agreeing the precise financial structure of a deal that both appear to want to happen. What Baleba brings to United's midfield is exactly what the double pivot alongside Mainoo requires: physical presence, energy, the ability to win the ball back quickly and use it sensibly under pressure, Premier League experience from 2 seasons at Brighton, a profile that complements Mainoo rather than duplicating him, with Baleba's more defensive and more physical orientation, providing the base protection that allows Mainoo's more progressive and more creative qualities to be expressed freely. At £80 million, he would be an expensive acquisition, but not an overpriced one for a player who fits the exact specification of what United need and who has already demonstrated the kind of commitment to the project that makes a failed integration unlikely. The Mateus Fernandes story is one of the most genuinely exciting and most personally compelling transfer links to emerge around United in recent weeks, and the detail that Bruno Fernandes himself has recommended the 21-year-old West Ham midfielder to United adds a layer of authenticity and a layer of personal advocacy that makes this pursuit feel significantly more substantial than typical transfer speculation. Bruno and Matteas are namesakes rather than relatives, but they share Portuguese heritage, a Premier League environment, and apparently a connection through the national team squad that has allowed Bruno to assess Matteas's quality at close range and reach the conclusion that he belongs at Old Trafford. Mateus Fernandes joined West Ham from Southampton for £38 million, plus £4 million in add-ons, after United passed on the opportunity to sign him at the end of last season. That decision is now being revisited with some regret internally, given how impressive the Portuguese youngster has been in his debut Premier League season, despite West Ham's overall difficulties. Matteas recently broke into the Portugal senior squad and played alongside Bruno, whose recommendation to United was reported by The Sun, and Portugal manager Roberto Martinez described his progress as incredible. The suggestion that he could earn a place in the World Cup squad this summer adds both a timing element to any potential transfer and a layer of additional validation from international football's most credible source. If West Ham are relegated, the likelihood of Matteas departing increases significantly, with the player almost certain to seek Champions League football if it becomes available. Even if West Ham survive the drop, they may struggle to retain a player who has demonstrated he is ready for a higher level of competition and whose agent will now be fielding approaches from multiple clubs. United have intensified their interest according to The Telegraph, and Bruno's personal endorsement gives this pursuit a dimension that goes beyond simple scouting and analytical assessment into the kind of player-led advocacy that can be decisive in convincing a target that this is the right club and the right moment. Bruno Fernandes' own contract situation is being actively managed by United ahead of the summer, with Team Talk reporting that the club wants to remove any lingering doubt about his future by agreeing a new deal that reflects his central importance to the project heading into the Champions League era. The framing from United's perspective is revealing and important. They want to keep Fernandes specifically with the view that he will be crucial to them winning the Premier League title in the next 2 years. Not Champions League quarter-final, not top 4, the Premier League title. That ambition is the level at which United are now planning, and Fernandes is considered essential to achieving it at the highest possible level. Bruno's own public words this season have been as clear as any United supporter could have hoped. Turning down Saudi Arabia multiple times, speaking about wanting to be there when United finally win what the fans want, describing the joy he gets from this club as something he cannot get anywhere else. The contract conversation is the formal expression of what has already been communicated through those public statements, and the expectation from all credible sources is that it concludes with a new deal being signed before next season begins. In other news, the Hojlund financial situation has been resolved in the most convenient and most timely way possible for United's PSR compliance, with Napoli on the verge of triggering the €44 million buy option that was included in the loan deal completed last summer. The activation of that clause is directly connected to United's Champions League qualification, which Napoli required their striker to have access to as a condition of making the permanent move. With qualification confirmed, the clause becomes active and Napoli will exercise it, banking £38 million for United and crucially doing so in a way that avoids what could have been a painful PSR loss had the striker departed for a lower figure in the current accounting period. £38 million for a player who was not making a meaningful contribution to the first team while simultaneously freeing the wages he was consuming. It is the cleanest possible resolution to what had become an uncomfortable situation. Elsewhere, Cole Palmer link to Manchester United has been a consistent thread running through the summer planning discussions for several months, and Chelsea's continued collapse in the league, having dropped multiple positions and lost multiple matches that have effectively ended their Champions League hopes, is creating exactly the conditions that make a Palmer departure from Stamford Bridge increasingly realistic. Palmer himself has been reported as becoming increasingly disillusioned at Chelsea, frustrated by tactical changes and the absence of Nicholas Jackson, who has been on loan at Bayern Munich. Champions League football next season will not be available at Stamford Bridge if Chelsea finish where current form suggests they will, and for a player of Palmer's quality and Palmer's ambition, that gap between what Chelsea can offer and what United can offer next season is becoming significant. United's active exploration of the Palmer situation has been confirmed by multiple credible sources, with the club genuinely intrigued by the prospect of bringing the former Manchester City Academy product back to the Northwest in the most exciting possible way. Real Madrid and Bayern Munich are also monitoring him, which means United would need to move with decisiveness and financial conviction to win this particular race. But the specific appeal of returning to Manchester, the Champions League platform, and the project that Carrick is building could give United arguments that the continental giants cannot match in terms of the specific personal narrative available to Palmer in this specific situation. In other news, Peter Schmeichel's verdict on Kobbie Mainoo and the World Cup is one of those comments that is simultaneously blunt, controversial and entirely logical from a Manchester United perspective. The Danish goalkeeping legend said simply hope not when asked if Mainoo should go to the World Cup with England, drawing on the painful precedent of Luke Shaw going to the Euros, playing barely any football and then returning to United struggling for fitness and form for months afterwards. Schmeichel's position is straightforwardly selfish in the best possible sense, prioritising United's interests over England's, and reflects the entirely reasonable concern that a Mainoo who enters the summer fresh, rested and fully prepared for pre-season is a significantly more valuable asset to Manchester United than a Mainoo who plays tournament football through June and July and arrives for pre-season in whatever physical and mental state the World Cup has left him in. Whether Gareth Southgate's successor selects Mainoo for the squad is is ultimately beyond United's control, and the player himself will have strong views about representing his country in the biggest tournament in football. But Schmeichel's instinct reflects a broader truth about the tension between club and country that every Premier League club with elite young English players navigates every summer, and the specific relevance to the project Carrick is building makes it a genuinely important and genuinely complex conversation, rather than simply the opinion of a former goalkeeper. Elsewhere, Marcus Rashford has sent a congratulatory message to Manchester United on social media following Champions League qualification, acknowledging the 3-2 win over Liverpool and the significance of the achievement. The message is warm and sincere, and it raises the inevitable question about his own future, because Rashford is currently playing Champions League football on loan at Barcelona, and his return to that level with his parent club is theoretically possible if the summer produces the outcomes that seem most likely. Whether Rashford is reintegrated at United, sold permanently to Barcelona at the agreed option price, sold to Bayern Munich if Heyman's recommendation is taken seriously, or moves to another European club entirely depends on negotiations that have not yet concluded. But his public acknowledgement of United's qualification is a reminder that this is a player who still has a relationship with this football club, however complicated and however unresolved. The summer of 2026 at Manchester United is shaping up to be one of the most ambitious and most transformative transfer windows this club has undertaken in the post-Ferguson era. Baleba expected at £80 million, Mateus Fernandes being recommended by Bruno, Palmer being actively explored, Tonali, Tchouaméni, Anderson, Ederson, all on the radar. Bruno's contract being extended, the Hojlund money coming in, PSR compliance protected, Champions League football confirmed, 3 games of the league season remain. The window is not yet open, but the planning is advanced, the targets are identified, and the financial foundation is stronger than it has been in years. Carrick is getting the job. Bruno is staying, the summer is coming, and Manchester United are ready to build something genuinely extraordinary on the Champions League platform that this entire incredible season has been delivering. The quiet revolution is about to get very, very loud indeed.